As I saw the Trae Young trade news coming out of Atlanta with the Hawks, it made me think of a bigger issue, a potential league wide issue that certainly could impact the Memphis Grizzlies. We're going to talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thanking you for tuning in to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, part of the number one podcast network, number one sports podcast network in the land. So appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with us today. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. So make sure you go take advantage of that now over at Gametime. We got a lot of things to talk about in today's show. We're going to talk about some recent point guard news around the NBA. We're going to talk about some Grizzlies players who are out and their potential returns, the impacts that those returns could make. And we're also going to preview a game today between the Grizzlies and the Spurs, the first leg of a back-to-back that Memphis is currently about to play, as they currently went through a 4-game losing streak. So at some point, the Grizzlies got to get a win during this stretch, but we'll talk more about the game against the San Antonio Spurs a little bit later. But first, we got to talk about the big news in the NBA on yesterday, and it ties into the Grizzlies, so you got to stick it here with me. But the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young, according to ESPN's Shams Charania, the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young are kind of starting to work together on potentially finding a trade for him out of Atlanta. So it seems like Trae Young's tenure with the Hawks is about to come to an end. He's been the franchise player there for a number of years. He led the team to the Eastern Conference Finals, at one point. All of that good stuff. But, I think the recent stretch where we saw when Trae Young came back, the Hawks looked bad, for lack of better words. And then when he went out, they looked decent. But overall, the Hawks they were a team with high expectations coming into this season. A lot of people had them pegged to this surprise team. With Trae Young, they made the big move going to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kristaps Porzingis, all these things. It just hasn't worked out. I think so far, Mark Stein put out that the one team potentially with interest is the Washington Wizards. I think there aren't that many teams that make a lot of sense for a Trae Young trade. I think one of those teams to me that makes sense is the Toronto Raptors because they have the pieces to make something happen. And also the Raptors have some inconsistency at the point guard position. Emmanuel Quickly is a solid NBA player, but I believe you have a higher ceiling, with a guy like Trae Young and his playmaking ability. If you compare that, with a Brandon Ingram, with a Scotty Barnes, and the guys that they have over there in Toronto. Another team that makes sense to me, and this is probably more the long shot, is the Houston Rockets. Like, if the Rockets wanted to take a swing, for another point guard, we know that Fred VanVleet could be back later on in the season. But other than that, like, you got Reed Shepherd, you got Amen Thompson, but still there is some kind of inconsistency at the point guard position right now for Houston, and they have the defense on the back line to kind of protect him, which brings me more to my next point. And this is what the part that's going to tie into the Grizzlies, and this is the big picture part here. When I saw the Trae Young trade news, and we've kind of seen in recent years, how certain point guards have been treated, I think you can make an argument right now that we're starting to see, for lack of better words, the death of the small point guard. You can make that argument. And maybe it's not even the death of the small point guard. Maybe it's just the small point guard is going out of style. It's starting to remind me of what we saw at the center spot when we went from the big low post guys. You didn't have to have the quickest feet and the quickest feet and things like that, to in the NBA now, or more in recent years. But you're starting to see the big man's returning. But if you go to the mid 2010s, 2015, those years, 2015, 2020, basically with Steph Curry's three-point shooting kind of upticked, and then the league's three-point shooting uptick. You saw teams go to more mobile bigs. They didn't really care if they had a low post game. They needed guys who could switch, guard 1 through 5, things like that. Uh, so it kind of pushed out bigs like Al Jefferson, Jahlil Okafor, those type of bigs in the league. Now, with the small point guard position, what we're seeing with our own eyes, a couple things we're seeing with our own eyes here is teams are having to make up for having a small point guard in other areas of the starting lineup or areas of the roster. Because when you have a smaller point guard in today's NBA, what's different than the older times, so to speak, is the fact that a lot of basketball now is hunt out a mismatch, create mismatches with screens. Teams like to switch these days. So if you have a smaller point guard like the Hawks with Trae Young, and you can even, like I said, since there's a Grizzlies tie in here, Ja Morant is technically a smaller point guard. We saw it in a playoff series against the Los Angeles Lakers. The OKC series a little bit, but that was a little bit different. But the Lakers, I still remember that 2023 playoff series. LeBron James, screen after screen after screen, putting Ja Morant in those screens, basically hunting him out, trying to create that mismatch to get in an advantageous situation. The small point guard right now is this position where you need to kind of make up for uh, at other spots on the roster. Jalen Brunson, for example. You look at the Knicks, they don't have a prototypical lineup. After Jalen Brunson, the team is pretty, you got Mikal Bridges, you got OG Anunoby, you got Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart. They surround him kind of with a lot of length to make up for, the lack of length that they have at the point guard position with Jalen Brunson. Same thing with the Memphis Grizzlies that we started to see over the last few years as they've kind of figured out that it's really hard to win with the small point guard as your lead guy. That's kind of the point that I'm making here. You probably can get away with it if, your point guard is third, fourth man or whatever, because you can just sub them out in certain situations. But Ja Morant, Trae Young, Jalen Brunson, those types are not supposed to come off the floor. Now with Ja Morant, couple of examples that come to mind is one, how the Grizzlies have currently reconstructed their starting lineup from previous years. Desmond Bane and Ja Morant didn't work in part because Ja Morant is a smaller point guard. There are some defensive limitations that he has. And then Desmond Bane, yes, he was 6'6", but we know about the smaller arms. And, there are some defensive limitations that even Desmond Bane had. And Desmond Bane is still a trying. I thought he was a solid defender, but he wasn't good enough in the Grizzlies' eyes to take them to that next level, in addition to having that smaller point guard that we're talking about. So that's why the Grizzlies now, if you've seen, they went away from that and they go draft a Cedric Coward. So now you got Jalen Wells and Cedric Coward alongside of Ja Morant, basically putting two bigger defensive-minded wings, and then you got Jaren Jackson Jr., and then when healthy, you have Zach Edey. So same thing, kind of similar to what New York has done. You put size and length around these guys to try to maximize the situation. The difference in, I think, the successful situations is those smaller point guards can make up for their limitations with their scoring and shooting ability. That's where Trae Young's offensive efficiency hasn't been, as good as some of his previous seasons. Ja Morant's offensive efficiency hasn't been as good lately, which is why, to me, right now, the Grizzlies just have a limited ceiling. But Jalen Brunson, on the other end of that, again, he's been one of the most dynamic scorers, in the NBA. And again, with the length that the New York Knicks have around him, that's a situation that you possibly could see that team, you know, actually battling back against the small point guard conundrum that we're starting to see around the league. So it's harder to win with smaller point guards today. Just go look at the recent NBA champions. Like you go look last season, we're talking about OKC, just won a championship and they have a bigger guard rotation. Before that, the Boston Celtics, Derek White was 6'4", but he has extremely long arms. Important player on that team. Before that is Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray, another bigger quote unquote point guard, so to speak. over there. So the bigger point guard is in style. It's the Cade Cunninghams, right? It's the what we're about to see with the Spurs. Dylan Harper, like those types are coming into the league more and more and more. Those 6'5" guys who can play three positions naturally and things like that, and it's making it harder and harder for the 6'2" guard or the 6'1" guard to still be as relevant in today's game, at least at the highest level. Like, I think there's always going to be a spot for a smaller guard who's going to come in and play spot minutes or be a rotation player and things like that. But to say I want to win a championship around this guy, it's very hard. Even if you go back to one of the most successful situations we've seen in recent years with Steph Curry and Golden State. Steph Curry is one of the greatest shooters we've ever seen, for one, the greatest shooter we've ever seen, excuse me. And then two, Golden State did the same thing that we talked about earlier with the teams putting more length around these guys. They had a 6'7" guard and Klay Thompson playing the two. Kevin Durant for a number of years, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala, all these prominent wing defenders surrounded them. Then you got Draymond Green kind of on the back end to protect things. So you have to have that type of makeup in order to protect these smaller point guards. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think there's a small point guard conundrum starting to unfold in the NBA, or if that's just, it's just a little mythical talk or whatever? It's like, let me know what you guys think about that as well. But coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk more about the Memphis Grizzlies and this injury situation. A lot of guys are probably close to return, if you want to phrase it like that. But which returns matter the most? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, friends already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night, right before the games tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. Again, NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame on Fridays, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time have become appointment of viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour allows and also is a way for you to bring something new, boost, bonuses, and surprise. And it's easy to check the weekly specials before tip and make a move before the window closes. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, that's 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel. Make sure you go check that out. Again, NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, where FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And guess what? There is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight the next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Make sure you go check that out now at quo.com/LockedOnNBA. Welcome back here to Locked On Grizzlies, where we got to talk about the Grizzlies injury situation a little bit more. Yesterday, we talked about some potential timelines. Some guys should be closer than others at this point of their return to play status. Some guys just picked up some injuries, like Cedric Coward, for example. He's out, for this game against the Spurs. Vince Williams Jr. is on his way back. John Morant is questionable. Injuries all over the place for the Grizzlies, but For this segment alone, we're going to focus on the guys right now who are technically still listed as out. So, Ja Morant, Vince Williams Jr., those guys are questionable. So that it's a clear sign that they're on their way back to returning. We're talking about the players that are out. And I phrase it as 5 players. I'm going to list and rank them in terms of which returns matter the most, 1 to 5. And number 5 for me is Brandon Clark. As a player we barely got to see this season, so it's hard for me to put him higher on this list. But I still believe that what Brandon Clark can give the Grizzlies as a rim running big definitely adds an element that they don't have much. And I think we saw a little bit of that when the Grizzlies picked up Christian Coloco and they put him in the starting lineup on a 10-day contract, in part because of his size, in part because of the rim protection. But we saw when Ja was playing with him for that little bit of time, Ja was throwing him lobs, and we just haven't seen that much this season, especially with Ja on the floor because he hasn't played much with Zach Edey. When Zach Edey was on the floor, he was getting fed lob, 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 lob because throw it up, 7'3" guy, he's gonna go get it. Brandon Clark gives you that. That's one of the strengths of his games. So I think that's a missing element that the Grizzlies could add when he potentially returns. Scottie Pippen Jr. is number 4 for me. He's been out a while. He's going to continue to be out a while. I think we shouldn't expect Scottie Pippen Jr. at this point in time, at least, to return in the month of January. So Scottie, the thing about Scottie is it's the defense, it's the offense, it's the scoring more so than the offensive totality, and it's the shooting. He shot the ball really well in his tenure in Memphis. So he's a guy that you can play in a lot of different spots. You can play him on the ball. He can be successful in that role. You can play him off the ball. He can thrive as a defender. I know last season we saw, especially late in the season, the Grizzlies went more to the Ja Morant, Scottie Pippen Jr. lineups. I think if you get a fully healthy guard rotation, which man, it doesn't even sound real. It doesn't even sound like something we could actually see, but it's possible. So if you get a fully healthy rotation with these point guards, I believe that Scottie Pippen Jr. is the Grizzlies' most versatile piece in that equation. He's the guy who I expect to be able to pair with John Morant, to be able to pair with Ty Jerome, to be able to pair with Cam Spencer, and you should see positive results in each of those groupings. With the other guys, we've talked about so far how the John Morant, Cam Spencer thing is still finding its way. I would think that Ty Jerome and John Morant is going to be a really good duo for Memphis as well. But that one too strikes me as one that's probably going to take a little bit of time to work out the kinks, like Cam Spencer and John Morant. But with Scottie Pippen Jr., very easy plug and play player for the Grizzlies. So I think that's going to make his return and make it more valuable because of the fact that he has that versatility for Memphis. Before I break down my last 3, I interrupt this segment to tell you that thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. Look, you got to come over to the Everydayer Club. It's an invite to the members only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. So you can hang out with me, Joe Monax. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to put exclusive content in there, all of that stuff. So make sure you go check that out on our personalized link as well, which is lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com. Make sure you go check it out. Now, back to our list. Here's the top 3 for me out of the guys who are currently out with injuries. Number 3 is Ty Jerome, third most important player to return for me. I think Ty Jerome is probably on the closer end, so we'll see, what that looks like here in the near future. But the idea of a guy who can play point guard, a guy who can play off the ball, just like we were talking about with Scottie Pippen Jr., but this is a very efficient offensive three-point shooter. He can be a creator. And the time we were talking to Ty Jerome before the season, I mean, just picking his brain, listening to the way that he talks basketball and breaks down basketball. Like, I think one of the things that I've seen with this Grizzlies team so far, and you've heard people kind of talk about it a little bit as well, is at times with the guys that have been available, there have been some questionable IQ decisions made with this team. But when you get uh Morant, when you back in the fold, when you get a Ty Jerome back in the fold, these are very high IQ players who a lot of times are going to see things before they're happening, and they're going to be able to adjust to things that are happening in the blink of an eye. We've seen Ja do it. You remember specifically when he said, I had OKC figured out, and everybody thought he was, talking crazy. But at the same time, he actually at the time. Now, it's not to say OKC couldn't have adjusted, but I understood what he was saying in terms of what OKC was doing defensively, how he had basically found a counter for the defensive coverages at that point in time. Now, moving to the number two guy for me, number two is Cedric Coward. Don't know how long he's going to be out yet. Let's get that out of the way. I think we'll learn more here in the next couple of days. I'm going to have updates. Make sure you follow me on X at Damichael C. Follow the commercial appeal. We're going to have updates on Cedric Coward's status. But this is a big loss. It not just because this is a player who's been in the starting lineup for you for most of the season and kind of has been reliable, steady, and all those things. But sure, the Grizzlies have wing depth, but the thing that stands out to me about Cedric Coward is just the versatility in his game. And I talk about this a lot with impact players. The best impact players to me are the ones where if you take away, you put one hand behind their back, they can still be really good. Cedric Coward, we've seen it time and time again. He has a game where he goes 0-5 from three-point range. He still is able to get 2 steals. He's still able to rebound the ball, throw a few assists in there, get to that mid-range jumper. He has a game where he's not getting many rebounds. The scoring's going to probably look better. The defense overall, in terms of just guarding this man, his defensive positioning, things like that. We've talked a lot about him as a weak side help defender, his ability to stay vertical against the bigger guys, against the smaller guys. It's a very rare skill that he has, and I think that the Grizzlies are going to miss that while he's out. Number one, of course, is Zach Edey. I've talked about this a lot. Don't really got to harbor on this point for too long. Zach Edey, cannot wait to see him in the fold with this Grizzlies team, especially with Morant. That is something that we have not seen much of this season, and I hesitate to have any overbearing, strong opinions on this team until we do see it. It's hard because so much of what the Grizzlies do will revolve around how that duo coexists and because of the shooters around them, because of Jaren Jackson Jr. Being able to play more mismatches, right? Because teams sometimes when they're going against Jock Landale or Christian Loco and others, they still feel like they can put their biggest big, if they want, on Jaren Jackson Jr. because those guys aren't as bruising of offensive threats. You're not doing that with Zach Edey in the game. You got 7-3, 7-4 Zach Edey in the game. You're going to have to put your biggest defender on him or you're going to get punished. So I think it helps Jaren Jackson Jr. in that way. And Zach Edey is a guy who we saw it just in that little time that he was available where he made the entire roster better. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out as well. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to break down the matchup between the Grizzlies and Spurs, round 3 for those teams coming up. So we're going to talk about that next on the show. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost, prices going all over the place. But guess what? That's where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. Fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confidence. And of course, you got those deals like the zone deals to help unlock great seats at even better value. So whether it's an NBA game or just another live event, everything is right there in one place for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today and get in on the action. The Grizzlies are getting in on the action in a matchup against the San Antonio Spurs coming up here. This is round 3 for these two teams. 3 of 4. The last 2 will be played in Memphis. Memphis is 0-2. against San Antonio Spurs up to this point. Both losses on the road, both losses, games where the Grizzlies struggled late in the fourth quarter. We talked about that in recently, especially coming off these two Lakers games where the Lakers kind of did the same thing, broke the Grizzlies down late in the fourth quarter. So of course that's going to be another major point. If the Grizzlies get in this game late in the fourth quarter, the Spurs got some De'Aaron Fox is the main one that we've seen kind of put the Grizzlies away recently, but it was Harrison Barnes knocking down big shots. It's been other guys factoring into the situation as well. But when I think about this game, uh, some things that stand out to me. Number one is this is a game that's going to be centered around the guards and the bigs, the guards and the bigs. So I'm taking the wings out the equation more so because of the fact that you're going to need the wings to guard San Antonio's guards. So like De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, these are bigger guards, right? But San Antonio's wings aren't as big of threats. They're mostly specialty guys. Julian Champagne, he's going to try to shoot the basketball. Harrison Barnes is going to get his spot up shooting opportunity. He might pump fake, get to his one dribble, pull up, go to the rim, do a little whoop-de-doo, whatever. But these aren't guys that are going to get the ball and say, get out of my way. Those guys are at guard for this team. And if Victor Wembanyama plays, who's questionable, so if he plays, there's going to be a guy at center as well. That's kind of where the game plan for the Grizzlies will revolve around. I think from that standpoint, it's a suitable game for the Grizzlies with the injuries that they have on the wing and whatnot. But at the same time, San Antonio has this team's number, and San Antonio has a lot of teams' number in the NBA right now, especially OKC. They got OKC's number 2. But here's another big one for this game. And if you're looking for some type of way the Grizzlies could potentially win this game, this might be the area. It's not a guarantee because if you watch a lot of Grizzlies games, you watch them against the top teams, struggled. Now, the Spurs at this point of the season, like if you want to talk, where are the potential holes, especially with the guys that they have healthy or whatever the case may be. They're not the greatest three-point shooting team. They're middle of the pack in the league, but they're missing Devin Vassell right now, who is, you can make an argument, their best three-point shooter, at least from a volume standpoint. He makes 2.7 three-pointers a game. There's the floor stretching ability that he has with his 7 three-point attempts per game. And we're talking about on roughly 38% three-point shooting. He's out right now. Devin Vassell has made some three-pointers against a bunch of teams. Made some against the Grizzlies as well. So you kind of lose that element. Stephon Castle, not really worried about his three-point shooting as much. De'Aaron Fox is roughly a league average guy right now. I think he's about 36% or so. De'Aaron Fox can make them. Like, it's not a guy you're going to leave open and dare to shoot it. But he's not the scariest three-point shooter over there. Julian Champagne, we know he just had a game where he made like 10, 11 threes. But right after that, he went ice cold. So the Spurs have three-point shooting still, even without Devin Vassell. But it's an area where I wouldn't be surprised if they have, a night where we're talking 10 of 30 or something like that. And on the other side of that, if you're talking about how can you, create some variance there, the Spurs also give up a few three-pointers. They give up some threes. Because right now, especially when Victor Wembanyama's on the floor, it's hard to score in the paint. It's hard to score in the paint when Victor Wembanyama's on the floor. So you see a lot of teams take more threes and make more threes against the Spurs. The question is, can the Grizzlies be able to do that without a guy, like Cedric Howard, who's been a solid three-point shooter, as a rookie, and we talked about all the other guys that they're missing right now. Cam Spencer is going to have to be a big part of that equation if that's to happen. Cam Spencer, I guess this is the moment for him. This is the slump for Cam Spencer that we're starting to see right now. He's been so good. He's been so consistent all season long. But right now, 4 consecutive games for Cam Spencer where he's finished with single-digit points. I think this comes after the stretch where I believe he had 12 games in a row. I want to say it was 14 games in a row for Cam Spencer in double figures. And now he's had 4 games in a row in single digits since then. And it's not just that. It's the three-point shooting. 0 of 5 in one game. 1 of 1. 1 of 2. 0 of 5. 2 three-pointers made for Cam Spencer in his last 4 games. 2 3-pointers made last 4 games. If you go to the stretch before that, if we're talking about 3-point shooting, 3 made in the game before that. 2, 3, 4, 7, 6 made 3-pointers in the game before that. So he had 6 consecutive games where he made multiple threes. Now he's had 4 consecutive games where he hasn't made multiple threes, and he's only made 1 3-pointer overall during this 2 3-pointers, excuse me, 2 3-pointers during this 4-game stretch. This is going to have to be a game where Cam Spencer brings it. He's had some good games against the Spurs. They're going to need him to shoot the basketball much better to kind of even out some of the big differences when you talk about these teams, because this is a game, again, with the rebounding. When Zach Edey was playing, the Grizzlies were dominating the glass against this Spurs team. I want to see what that's going to look like in this matchup. You really can't compare the previous matchups against the Spurs to this one because there's no Zach Edey. There's also the potential of a Victor Wembanyama playing. We mentioned that earlier, but Victor Wembanyama did not play in the first 2 games against the Grizzlies. So that's going to be another factor that's going to look a lot different. So both these teams are going to look different from previous meetings. Ja Morant as well did not really play in those meetings. So no Ja Morant, no Victor Wembanyama in the past. Both guys are questionable. We'll see what their status will be closer to game time. Make sure you go over to X at Damichael C or over to commercialappeal.com to follow our Grizzlies coverage. But thank you guys for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen. Make sure you tune into the show on tomorrow. Joe Mullinex is going to recap the San Antonio Spurs matchup, so make sure you stay tuned for that. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Grizzlies ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head over to our personalized link to the show that is lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com. And for those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen, NBA Game Night, on Locked On NBA. So make sure you go take advantage of that as well. But we appreciate you guys as always for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, Locked On Grizzlies is there. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.